What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about a pretty troubling rumor with Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know everything about Call of Duty or that I'm even all that interested in it, but what I tend to do with these videos is, hey, even if I'm not necessarily interested in the game, is there a topic about it that actually can resonate where I make a video? And this is something that I've talked about for quite a while, and I do think, and I'm very happy to see, people not really backing it either, or not really liking it. Now, we'll talk more about my opinion on it, but let's first go over what the actual rumor is, and it comes from Tom Henderson. He says, Insider Gaming has been able to verify with multiple GameStop employees that Black Ops 6 will release on past-gen consoles. And then he says, according to developer sources, the franchise doesn't necessarily need to move away from past gen since the move to Call of Duty HQ. As part of the Microsoft Activision deal, which will bring COD to Nintendo for 10 years, it's understood that COD will be released on Nintendo platforms starting with the Switch 2, presumably next year, as the original Switch isn't powerful enough. And, I mean, the second part to it, I think, is more interesting, especially with, like, the Switch 2, right? That's a big deal. Like, you're going to start to see, by the way, just more rumors with the Switch 2 and maybe more third-party games going there than what we've kind of gotten used to or, what we've seen. But it's that first part that just really ticks me off. Now, again, like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm all that interested in COD. This would be an example of just a popular franchise that I just don't have the most care for. But it's the idea of not leaving past gen behind that makes me mad. This is something that I talked about, and I probably was like too ahead in the sense that it was probably even like a bad look for me to be so far ahead. When the next gen came out, in PS5 and Xbox Series S and X, I did make a big deal for several different games of why in God's name are you on the last gen. Now, again, I think I did it too early. I think in retrospect, you look a year and a half, maybe even 2 years into the next gen, being out. It's not even about leaving last gen behind at that moment, right? In the first year and a half, 2 years, you're trying to push the new consoles, but you're also saying, well, look, we know where the majority of players are, and we get the situation. And also, these consoles came out in a not great situation, the year that it released in, right? So, okay, in retrospect, I can understand it, but this is too far. I mean, I gotta be real, this is too far. People were throwing stats of like, well, how many of these games now in a row has it been? And I think that people are saying 4. It's definitely 4 times that now it's done both generations, but I think the previous record was not 4. I think it was 2 or 3. So it's clear, and this is something that we have noticed, as time has gone on, there is a reluctancy to let go of the PS4 and Xbox One player base, but there's even more of a reluctancy to do it now than there was last time, right? And people are throwing together like the sports titles. Well, how long, the Maddens of the world, the FIFAs of the world, they tend to hold on to the generation before for quite some time. Now, I do feel like maybe the PS2 era, right? That era was held on to forever. For me, when you have a franchise, I'm talking to Xbox actually at this point, right? When you have a franchise as big as COD, and I know they're not so much into the consoles, right? They're into Game Pass, they're in the ecosystem, they're not necessarily into the console itself. But like, this is something that helps move the generations forward. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that like the newer things are the better things. We've long talked about which generation is actually the best. But like when you're putting out consoles and when people buy the consoles and people complain, and we've seen it, right? When people complain like, well, when is this generation going to actually begin? It's hard to begin when you don't let go of the past. When you have, and I even did this for, say, a God of War Ragnarok. Let's switch over to PlayStation, right? When that game was coming out, I said, like, this should be a PS5 only game. And again, like, I think with each year, that stance got more popular, right? I think I was even saying it. I was defending when Final Fantasy did it with the Yuffie DLC. That was very early on. I think that was maybe like 6-7 months into the PS5. And I said, no, this is a good thing. Like, you want to do this. I think that was maybe too soon, but no, when it comes to the Horizons of the world, or when it comes to Spider-Man, and some of them have done it. Some of them have done it, some of them have not done it, but it needs to be all. It needs to be that movement. I just don't understand. And to be honest with you, the way I look at it, right, and what ticks me off, and I think what maybe ticks off some other people as well, we buy these consoles, they promise all of these innovations and all this stuff. Well, number one is releasing it on like 6 different things going to hold it back. And I think the answer is yes. I think the more platforms that you make a game for, the less you're able to spend on any of the individual ones, right? So if you have it on, say, 2 or 3 of the old gen, you erase those. Well, now you have, I don't know how much time. Maybe you buy yourself an extra month. Maybe you got 20 more people to help you for a couple months, whatever it might be. But the idea is you're going to get more time, you're going to get more resources, whatever, to maybe invest in like the future. And again, like, hey, maybe the past is actually better. But when it comes to buying these consoles and promising the resolutions, right, what the PS5 can handle, what the Series X can handle, well, you can't really it maybe can handle it, but you're not developing for it if you're making it for a console that is 10 years old at this point. Like, or actually, I think even longer than that. I think 11 years old, right? It's nuts. It's nuts to me that we are still putting games right now in 2024 in the fall, 4 full years after it's come out, and 11 years after the last ones. You're still putting it on the PS4 and Xbox One. I guess, to me, what does it say about the current generation, right? Like, well, obviously you must not care about it all that much. Now, as I said in the beginning, like, I get it to an extent with the user base. It's really a trade-off. It's what do you care, I guess, more about, but you don't necessarily have to have one or the other. I think that's where maybe people get a little stuck, right? Because you could say, well, Alex, you're putting it on all of them, so you're getting every single player. True, but you do, as a company, you want to keep the generations moving. And it's going to look even worse when in 2 or 3 years you get the next Xbox, you get the next PlayStation. Did we even have a generation right now? And I've said it before, I think this is the weakest one. Because I think you can argue that we haven't even really started this generation yet. We've had games here and there. You couldn't have a Hellblade 2 on past gen, like Unreal Engine 5, right, with all that. Maybe like a Spider-Man or what they did with Ratchet and Clank and stuff. You could pick the different platforms. There's some games that have pushed it. And not that, again, necessarily technology is everything. But again, you're selling the consoles, you're selling these promises and expectations, and then you're so boggled down with doing the old stuff that you can't even deliver on the stuff you promise. And then in 1.5 years from now, when Xbox does the next Xbox, or PlayStation does the PS6, or even PS5 Pro, which might even be coming this fall, or maybe say next year, whatever it happens to be, well, why would you get those? Why? And I even ask myself that sometimes. Why am I going to get these when... Are we even getting these console generations? All it proves is that they do maybe just side with the user base thing, right? And it's like, okay, well, then why buy the PS6? Why buy the next Xbox? And, like, why do it? Because if it's going to come out on the old Xbox for the next 5 years, well, what's the point? I can wait 5 more years. You know what I mean? That, to me, is actually the most mind-boggling. That, say, if you're a COD player, they have given you now 4 years, and this could have been the year. Say this is the year they say, you know what? If you want to play COD, you're going to have to get the next-gen stuff. Sorry, it's not even next-gen anymore. It's current-gen because we're literally living in it, right? So, okay, but instead, you're now going into next fall. You've now given people 5 years. And again, you might look at that as a positive, but if you want them to keep up, and I've seen this actually on Twitter, and it might sound bad, but I got to be real. It's kind of like how you have to do it. You have to force people to do it. If you want people to get your PS5, if you want people to get your Series S or X, you need to force them into it. Now, okay, the best case is you kind of like win them over kind of naturally, right? Maybe there's certain games, but that's actually still forcing them, right? Because you give them something so powerful, right? Like the next blank game is only on this console. It needs to be good, and and you can show it off in like a friendly way where it's like, hey, look how good this game is. Oh, but by the way, it's only on the next gen stuff. So sorry, like now if you don't get it, we don't hate you, we love you. We want you part of the ecosystem. Like that's all you really have to do, and that's generally how it's always been, right? And yes, there is a point when a new console comes out, there's a gap period where you say, you know what? We get it. Consoles are hundreds of dollars. Not everybody has a lot of money. In fact, most people don't. So it's like, okay, we want to give you a couple buffer years where you're not going to get punished too badly, but we do want to give you reasons to get the next gen thing. And Call of Duty is like one of the biggest things you can give people. Now, not everybody. I just said I'm not in. Like, if you promise me Call of Duty on the next console and that's it, doesn't move the needle for me because I'm just not into it. But let's not kid ourselves. Call of Duty is enormous. It's tens of millions of players. So if you want to even get 10-20% of them, you put it on only the next gen, and you're going to get people that upgrade simply because of Call of Duty. Would I upgrade for one game? Not necessarily, but I could see others doing it. I think others actually do that. So for me, I think it's a terrible idea. I think it's a bad look. I get it. I get it from the user base thing, but there's got to be a point where, and again, it's not one or the other. It's not like you're saying, hey, we're leaving all these people in the dust. That's not actually what it is. You're hoping that they don't get left in the dust. You're hoping that they follow you. If they don't follow you, there's nothing really that you can do about it other than keep delivering great games that are only on a certain platform to continue to bring them over. That's it. That's how you win a console war with exclusivity things. That's how you win moving your player base to the next generation, is you just keep delivering games that you can only play on that place. And if people follow you, great. If they don't, it's okay, but maybe eventually they'll follow you. To keep it on all of them 4 years in, and again, we can keep going back. It goes into a big circle, right? You go back into the technology thing. Is it holding it back? I think it is. I think when you put a game nowadays, if you're putting a game on PS4 and Xbox One, I cannot imagine you aren't holding that game back in some way. If you didn't, there's got to be things that would be better with that game by not having it on last gen. And so by putting it on last gen, I feel like you're admitting to me where it's like, yeah, the game could be better. The game could be maybe more innovative, or it could push the technology a little further, but we don't want that because we're going for whatever reason we're going for. That's what that signals to me. And I don't know. Year 1, fine. Year 2, fine. I had some problems with it at the time. It was not a great look, whatever. Year 3, come on. It's about time. Year 4, for the love of God, we're almost half a decade into this thing. You've got to let it go. So hopefully I'm not alone in this. I don't think I'm alone in this from the comments I've seen on social media, but you guys let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.